Hi, my name is Jason Morgan. I'm a wildlife artist. Welcome into my studio, and on this video I'm going to be painting a tiger, but it's going to be in acrylics. Now, you've probably seen me in other videos use acrylics before, but it's usually just as the underpainting because I like the oils to go on top because they're open longer and I get a lot more blending time. But on this video it's going to be 100% acrylic. Now, if you've seen my previous acrylic video on my YouTube channel, I've tested out lots and lots of different type of good quality acrylics, and some perform much better than others. And the one that I liked better than the others so far is by Schminky. Now, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, probably not, but it's called Primacryl. And this is the tubes that I got. Now, this is the actual professional one, so that's called the Primacryl Finest Artist Acrylic. And by mistake I also got some of these Academy ones, which are a little bit cheaper, but the problem I found with these are they're that little bit thinner. Now, on my videos I usually like to have the palette by the side of the painting, and those thinner paints then started to run down a bit, but they're brilliant paints, they're really fantastic, they're just that little bit thinner. So for me personally, I rather the artist thicker ones, but other than that they perform really well. And the thing I like about them more than the other acrylics is that when they dry to a slight sheen. Now, that's very similar to my alkyd oils, and it means that the darks stay more vibrant looking when they dry, and they don't go very dull like lots of other acrylics do. So far I can really recommend these, and I'll be using slow dry and mediums as well to try and make them stay open that little bit longer. So I hope you like the video. I think you should check out these Primacryls, even if you just buy a single tube or perhaps a dark color like a black or brown, just to try it out next to your own standard acrylics and see if you think they actually look better when they dry. So hope you enjoy the video. Hi, and welcome to my tiger painting video in acrylics. And what I've got so far is my reference drawing onto some canvas that I've taped to my board. I sealed it with spray fixative. I've got lots of demos of that online, and I've just put a quick coating of burnt umber with a little bit of white in on top of it, just to tone the canvas. And that's all dry. Then I've just sprayed a little bit of just pure tap water onto the canvas because I'm going to do the background in green and block that in. So I just sprayed a little bit of water because I wanted to actually slip a bit more on the canvas. That's all, simple as that. Just got a couple of colours out so far. There's no point with acrylics putting loads of colours out because it's all going to dry too quick and I'm just going to waste paint. So I've got my titanium white. That I just dipped into is a little bit of the Winsor & Newton slow dry and medium, Naples yellow that I'm into now, and then I've got ultramarine blue, and that's burnt umber up on the top, cad red, and that's the yellow as well, and another titanium white down the bottom. But as I say, most of my videos I'm not out to actually, you know, if you want to paint along, that's totally up to you, but I'd rather I'm just showing you the techniques that I'm using. I'm new to acrylic myself. I usually work in alkyd oils, so I'm showing you the techniques so that you can use it in your own projects. Now, I did a little video on YouTube showing you some of the pros and cons with acrylics. The biggest con, or the biggest problem for me coming from alkyd oils, is their speed of drying, and that's why I'm using some of that slow dry medium. You know, it's not so bad on areas where you've got lots of details where you want it to dry, but when you're actually trying to blend the background, that's when I don't want to be rushing when I'm painting. And there's a reason I came away from watercolor painting, because it was making me rush all the time, and went over to oils where I could, you know, take my time and enjoy the process of getting the paints down, matching the colours up, mixing colours, blending. Acrylics have got lots of advantages, especially if you're doing real fine detail. As I said, the disadvantage for me then is the drying time. Now, looking back on it, I think for something like the background, it probably would have been a better idea to have put the correct amount of that painting medium actually into the colour, the separate colours that I've got there. So I could put, say, 1 to 1 or whatever the maximum would have been on there, mixed it into those base colours with a palette knife, and then I would have had the correct quantity all the time in my mixes for the background, and it would have all stayed wet. Whereas when you're just dipping into it every now and again with a brush, you're never going to get the correct quantity. So you're going to have a little bit drying and the bit staying wet. So next time I'll actually mix that in, if I can remember in time. I'll actually mix it into the base colours. So I'm making up a little bit more of that green. Just getting a basic colour in for the background. Simple as that. So I'm just going to speed this section up because this is quite a long video, so there's going to be certain sections I'm going to have to speed up to bring it down to a more manageable size video for you all to watch. Okay, so nothing complicated about that at all. And the benefit with acrylics is the background's now dry, so I haven't got to worry about touching it and smudging the paint and all the things that you would have to think about with oils. But because I've painted with oils so much, you can see I've still got my Mars stick actually on a dry area of the painting, so it wouldn't really make much difference. So I've just made up a black, thinned it down with just a little bit of water. That's all I'm using as a thinner. Every now and again you may see me dap into the slow medium, that's that white area in between the colours, just to prolong the drying if I need it. But I've just got a synthetic round brush, just a smallish brush, and I'm just blocking in the black stripes, just as I would with oil painting, just to keep those stripes actually in view. Otherwise, when I'm starting to block in the tiger more, then they're just going to get lost, and obviously stripes are really critical to get in the shape and form of the tiger's head. So I'm just going to continue now just to block in these areas. And every now and again you'll see I've got a little spray bottle, just like a little atomizer filled with just pure water, and I spray my master blobs of colour just to keep them wet and keep them actually usable. Otherwise they're going to start to skin over really fast, and then it's just going to be an absolute waste. All acrylic and oil paints and watercolour paints, they're all really expensive, so I'm all for trying to conserve them. It's another reason I like the oils, they stay wet longer, and another reason a stay wet palette or something similar for the acrylics would really save a lot of money in the long run. So now those stripes are blocked in, and once again the benefit with acrylics is that they're dry within minutes. Now I can just start to block in the actual tiger. Now normally I would have had to have waited for the next day for this, all carefully gone around the stripes if I was using alkyd oils. But with acrylics I can just go straight in for it. Now that's why, by using acrylics underneath the oils, I find you get the best of both worlds. So I can use the acrylics and do the underpainting, and it dries almost instantly, and then I can go over the top then with my alkyd oils, and they stay open long enough, usually to the next morning, but they stay working or workable long enough, say perhaps 2 or 3 hours, that I can keep blending and going into it and playing around with the colours. So I'm not limited then as I would be with acrylics, and by using an acrylic as an underpainting, as I often do, I'm getting the benefit of speed and being able to get onto it quite quickly. But for this demonstration I'm going to use acrylics all the way through, because I know some of you can't or don't want to use oils. Perhaps you've got a sensitivity to thinners. I use odorless thinners with my oils myself, and I'm quite sensitive too, but I don't find any problems with alkyd oil. So you may want to just buy one tube, try it out, see if you can get on with that as well, because it is much easier to do the blending side of things with oils. Now if you've only ever used acrylics, you need to know that not all oils are the same. So if you use a standard oil, then you'll find that some colours, usually the lighter colours like yellows and whites, they can take many days to dry. But if you use an alkyd oil, then it's already got a medium in it. Now medium, in this case, an alkyd medium speeds up drying drastically. So those oils are then really touch dry by the next morning. So I'm just going to continue blocking in now, nothing complicated about it. I'm just mixing a little bit of a lighter brown or a darker brown just to try and get the shape and form of the tiger in there, so it's giving me a nice base, a nice map as I usually say, so that I can build upon it. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit so that you can actually see this all develop. So nothing complicated about it. The main mix for the the base tone of the tiger, we're looking at the burnt umber really. With the burnt sienna, it's that little bit red, but it's much redder, as I've just put it out there, than my normal burnt sienna, so you've got to be very careful with that in this particular brand. But just add in a little bit of white to that master mix, which as I said is mainly burnt umber. And the colours, definitely not critical at this stage. What you're looking for is to be able to squint at the reference and see those massed tones, so the masses of lights and darks, and to just get them in. And when you put in the lights in at this stage as well, make sure they're not pure white. You want to save your highlight, your brightest highlights, for the end. So everything needs to be a little bit muted and a little bit darker than you want it in the finished painting. It's not a big problem though, if you go too light you can always go over it, but it just saves that little bit of work. Now with these lights that I'm doing now, there's a lot of green in there too. So you need a bit of blue, you need a bit of yellow, and you can subdue that then with a bit of black. I don't use black straight out the tube very often, but it's great colour for subduing. Okay, so back down to normal speed, and I've zoomed right in now so you can see me do the eyes, because I know lots of you like to see the eyes come alive. And exactly the same techniques as I always use on my videos, my painting videos, with the blocking in, but because it's a small subject, obviously I'm using much smaller brushes, and it's going to be more of a suggestion of the eyes and the marks in there, rather than going into extreme detail because it's really so small. So starting off with the base colour. With oils, as you know, you work from dark to light generally. So always look at maybe not the darkest colour to start off with, but usually, a dark colour. Now a little bit lighter around the back, and I'm blending that into the dark then when I come forward. Like I said before, eyes are really easy to do once you know the principles. They are quite easy. Just the barest suggestion on the left hand side. And that goes around the top too. And then I'm re-establishing the darks in, because when it's this size they obviously become muddied or mucked up a little bit, or I go over them slightly, so just re-establishing that. And I'm using a synthetic brush from Rosemary & Co. The size is not really relevant because, you know, the point comes to a really fine tip. And, you know, the larger, when I work larger I use a larger brush, and when I work smaller I use a small brush. But I haven't gone too small. I haven't gone to a minuscule 0 size brush for it yet. When you've got a nice sharp point on the tip like this, you can do virtually any small detail with it. So you can see, so that's it blocked in, but you can see, you know, it really looks dead. And they look dead, the eyes will always look dead until the highlight goes in, but generally 99% of the time keep that highlight till last. So getting the pupil in, it's quite easy on this one because I haven't got the other eye there looking straight at me to make sure they're lined up perfectly, so it's not that critical this time. A little bit lighter then at the bottom of the eye, because where the light comes in through the top it then reflects into the bottom part of the eye. And then I need to go a little bit darker on the top to create that shadow. I just need to shape this left eye just slightly. Should go down a little bit more at the bottom. That's better. And then when you're doing highlights, you can always let it dry. You can carry on with, you know, the rest of whatever painting you're doing yourself. You can carry on and come back and do that later, or you can just use, you know, a very soft touch and float the highlight on it. So just dab it on really lightly. So I'm just gonna get a couple of these stripes back in because they're starting to get a little bit lost, and I don't want to actually lose their shape and position much. Especially, people think that working smaller is usually easier, but it's actually, I find it a lot harder, because errors and mistakes, if you're off by 2, 3, 4 millimeters on a tiny painting like this or small painting, it really can become a glaring error. Whereas if you're doing something perhaps 20 inches by 16 inches and maybe just the face, then if you're off very slightly, more often than not you don't even notice it. But on these little ones, you know, you really need to keep quite accurate. So that's brought the shape around the eye a little bit better, standing out a bit more now with those darks in. So I'm making up just a lighter mix, just for that little touch of a highlight, and look at the difference that makes. Just makes that glassy appearance come alive straight away. So that eye wasn't difficult at all. And I can come back in and refine that over. It's not a problem. Just reshape that pupil a bit. Okay, so I've cleaned off the palette, put a little bit of fresh paint out as well. It's actually a new day, and I want to refine this background a little bit more. I want it a bit darker at the top, so I've put a little bit of the slow drying medium on my brush and on the glass palette. And as I've said, in hindsight, now I've finished this painting and I'm actually just going through it and editing it and looking back on it, what I would rather have done was put the slow drying medium in the correct quantity, so 1 and 1 for the Winsor & Newton, into the actual base mixes, so you know, the mixes that have come out of the tube, and that would have allowed it to slowly, or to dry more slowly and more evenly. But what I did instead here, I put a bit of the medium just on the palette and I was dipping my brush in it every now and again, so you can't really work out then how much medium is going in, and it does actually still dry too fast. But all I'm going to do is mix up a few darks, and I'm going to go over this top section and blend it all together a little bit. So I'm just going to speed this section up for you. So nothing complicated about the mix. A little bit of red in there, a little bit of blue to give that purpley colour, a bit of white then just to deaden it down. I can subdue again with just a small amount of black. And just a suggestion of those distant bushes, wherever they may be, trees. Working on one area at a time because the acrylic dries fast, even with the slow medium. And that's more my fault than the paint, because as I said, I should have put that medium into the main mix so it was all nice and consistently drying. Just a suggestion as well of those little bits of grasses and bushes going over the top of the dark, so they're just in front of those dark areas. And mixing up just a basic green, quite subdued as well. And if you want to subdue a green, you put in a little bit of a red, and a real small amount. It's a complementary colour, so it'll subdue, but don't put in too much. And just the suggestion there of grasses that'll work as the underpainting. And then making up a nice light mix as well. So I've put my reference photo right up by the canvas because I've started doing this grass and I'm not particularly happy with it. I'm not happy with the colour of it, and I'm getting closer so I can match those colours up a little bit more. Now I'm working a lot from my screen to the left, so I wanted that's showing me a warmer colour, but when I put it down I'm really starting to struggle with this grass, so I'm getting the reference photo nice and close so that I can, you know, see the details, see what I need to put in and what I don't need to put in. And I'm finding when I was working with oils and alkyd oils, this process was much easier, but even with a slow drying medium, because it's drying not quite evenly, I'm finding this all a little bit tricky to do in the acrylics. So I've moved it real close because what I want to do is get that base colour much more accurate. So I thought I'd show you this because, you know, don't think that professional artists and, well, all I can speak for is myself. I make mistakes too, fairly frequently, and you know, I've got to go over those, correct them, correct shapes, correct colours, you know, so don't be too hard on yourself if you make mistakes as well. It doesn't always work out perfectly. In fact, it's quite rarely it works out perfectly. So I've mixed up a bit of a green and I'm just adding a little bit more yellow into it. And down the bottom of my palette, just under the white that I've just put on, you can see a little area. You may not pick it up, it's just by that green, and it's a clear liquid just by my brush, and that's the what I've just dipped into there. That's the actual medium, the slow drying medium. So I'm getting the colour really close. The red just deadens that colour down a little bit more. I'm just darkening it slightly, because don't forget I need to get some lighter marks on there as well later. A little bit of water as well. And now I've got that much more accurately, that colour. I'm just going to block this section in. And now I've blocked it in. I've put the reference photo in again. I've made up a mix that's just slightly darker, and I'm actually more consciously now trying to, you know, follow the marks on the reference photo by the side of me. When you get a confusing area, and grass can be really confusing, especially when it's blurred out like this and it's you know, trying to show recession with it, think of the reference photo and the actual painting just in little squares. So think of, you know, perhaps like a 3-inch square on both, and without letting your mind go into autopilot, actually paint what you're seeing and just concentrate on that square. And once you've done that, then move down or across a little bit and concentrate on another square. And you'll find that when you look at just one section, it simplifies much more in your mind, so you don't get confused and end up putting random dots and dabs everywhere. Now the green that I overpainted, I've done that all around the canvas, so down to the bottom, which we can see on screen now, and also under the reference photo, you know, around the back of the tiger and the belly of the tiger as well. So I'm just going to continue this process now with my flat brush with that darker paint and try and get it to look a little bit more like grass than it does at the moment. So once again, just creating a basic green mix. And with acrylics, unless you're using some sort of palette that's going to keep this wet, you're going to have to keep mixing, and that can be a bit of a problem because you're going to have to keep matching colours. I know some artists will make up a large batch of something like this green and keep it in small tubs, airtight containers, so they can keep coming back to it. But with this green, I'm struggling a little bit with the colour. So don't be concerned if you're following along with this. I'm going to go over this green again, because I'm not happy with the way it's coming out at all. So I'm just going to put in a few of the dark suggestions, some more of the shadowy areas, but what you could do there is just actually darken the whole area, because as I said, I'm going to go over this again, so it'd be worth watching the video through once at least to see what I'm going to do with that grassed area. When I get a little bit bored with doing an area, perhaps with grass or something that's very repetitive, I like then to switch it up a bit. So I've cleaned off the palette and I'm going to start blocking in the tiger. Now that's something that comes along then fairly quickly, so it's a nice breather really from something repetitive like the grass. And I know that when I'm blocking in now, it'll come across, you know, filling quite quickly, and I'll feel a bit more satisfied then that I've achieved that bit more. Now the thing with the Schmincke Primacryl paints is they're very vibrant. So the Cad Orange is more powerful than in my standard Winsor & Newton oils, and the Burnt Sienna, top left hand corner there, is much redder than any other Burnt Sienna that I've ever seen really. It's in between a red and a brown really, so it's not as easy for me to pick out these vibrant oranges that are going along the back of the tiger that I would normally find with my oils. I'd get them a lot easier, but they're real powerful colours in this Primacryl range, so I'm not sure if there's anything else in there that's a little bit closer perhaps to a Burnt Sienna. So I'm using my flat bristle brush again, fairly large. I'm just searching out the areas that need this kind of brick colour or orangey colour. So this is where the light is going to hit on the back, and then I'm going to eventually have those bamboos in front, which will make all this recede. And something, a mistake I make, and I don't know why I did it, I think I was thinking I was going to put in a lot more of the bamboos at the front, and in the final painting I don't put in as many actually that are in the drawing, in the reference photo. So the problem I give myself is I don't block the stripes in on the body at this stage, and it would have been much easier if I'd blocked all those stripes in. And if you're following along for practice purposes, check out the reference photos, have a look where the stripes are supposed to be on the back and towards the belly as well, and block those in, because it's going to save a lot of hassle later on trying to get them in between the bamboo stems. And in every other painting I always put the spots and the stripes in, and I cannot understand for the life of me why I didn't do it in this one, because I know I wasn't going to, even if I was going to put some extra bamboo in, I wasn't going to put in so many that you couldn't see the tiger through it at all. So I think it just slipped my mind. But if you're actually following along and practicing, doing this as a practice piece yourself, get those stripes in at this stage now. So get your black acrylic, get it on there first, and then block the body in, and it's going to save a lot of hassle later on. So this is simply just blocking in, nothing complicated. So I can speed this section up, and you see how I'm just doing that easy blocking in. The thing I'm concentrating more than anything is to get the lights and the dark right in it. So the blocking in is really simple at this stage. It's mainly the burnt umber, a little bit of burnt sienna in there as well, and a small amount of white. But I'm just after, once again, with the underpainting, just squinting my eyes and blocking it in and looking for the lights and the darks, or at least a middle tone, because I can always come back and darken areas very easily. So a little bit of black in there to darken that, and see how it gives it that shape and form that I'm after. I'm after a solid looking underpainting. So I'm not worried at all about details or anything like that. I'm just after making it look, you know, three-dimensional. And on that foreleg with the paw that's raised a bit, I've left an area at the top unpainted because I want to get the light in there. And it's a very vibrant area too. So that foreleg looks a bit thin at the moment, but that's going to be overpainted. So making up a subdued white with blue, black, white, a little bit of brown in there as well, just for the underpainting of the white fur in this section. And now I've got that blocked in, and the beauty of the acrylics is it's all dry straight away again. Even though I've been using slow dry and medium on the background, I know that's pretty much dry as well. So that's something I've really got to play with a lot more to perfect that. Now, when you're doing wildlife and nature scenes, more often than not you want to subdue a colour, and you want to make a colour more dirty. Lots of beginners have trouble because, you know, you put out a colour out of a tube, especially the reds and the yellows, is so vibrant. Now remember, to subdue a colour, look at a colour wheel and then pick the colour on the direct opposite. So you've got your red, your yellow and your blue. So if you've got a blue and you want to subdue it, opposite on the colour wheel is orange, so you just put a little bit of orange in there, something like a burnt sienna even, and that'll subdue it. So that's the basic principle. I cover that a lot more in my ebook Oil Painting Made Easy, and I show quite a few examples on there as well, but the basic principle is to subdue a colour, go to the one opposite it on the colour wheel and add a little bit of that. So just a bit of refinement really, working with the lights and the darks, and making sure I'm going dark enough on these sections so the lights will show up. Painting in the fur direction as always. And darkening down some of the other areas as well. Okay, I'm making up a nice dark brown. You can see how some of the paint is drying now on my palette, and I should have sprayed it more often to keep it wet. The other alternative is a Stay Wet palette, and I've got one but I haven't actually used it, but the reports that I've seen tells me that it does actually keep your paint wet for much longer, days even, and it looks like it's a good idea. But the problem I would have is not being able to show you the paint palette on the side, because it'd need to be kept flat then, I think, otherwise the water's going to run out to the bottom. So darkening the stripes now. And that's immediately going to give it quite a bit of pop. The thing with a small painting is that you can never really get as much detail in as a large painting, or the impression of detail, because unless you go to micro brushes, size zeros, and you're going to take hours and hours and hours, you're just looking for the suggestion. So with the smaller paintings, the critical thing is getting the colours right and getting the tones, the lights and the darks right, to give that impression of realism when you're standing back, say 10 foot looking at it. Just darkening that section of the mouth as well, and then I can go on and start to block in the stripes then on the body. Although, as I said, I don't do anywhere near enough. I should have blocked them all in, but I'll just block a couple in now. It's a simple process, just making up a dark, and then in the direction of the fur growth, just painting those marks in. So I'm using a smaller bristle flat brush, just getting those stripes in roughly the right position. And you can see how much easier it is to put the stripes in after the base tone is in. I'm just darkening some areas up as well, and I should have put all the stripes in now at this stage for the whole body, because it just makes it much easier when I overlay those bamboo stalks and stems, that I haven't got to worry about what's being seen through, you know, the gaps in there. So that's what I should have done and put all of those in. So that extreme highlight now on the front of this foreleg. And just a few suggestions there of the highlights as well. But all still in the painting at this stage. Just trying a few highlights out just to see how it will look, how bright I'm going to need to go in the end. So these are, as I said, still just the underpainting. And a little bit of that highlight right up on the top as well, going in. Just trying that colour out. Okay, now I've blocked those stripes in a little bit more, and like I said, you should have blocked all of them in yourself if you're doing this. I've decided yet again I am absolutely still not happy with that green colour, so I'm really struggling on it, I'll be honest with you. It's the paints, I'm so used to the oils and having plenty of time for the mixes that the acrylics is making me rush with the mixes a lot more, even with a slow dry and medium, and I'm just not happy with the colour that it is. I want it lighter, and by being lighter, going back, it makes it recede more and it'll make the tiger pop forward. So I'm mixing up another mix, browning it down a little bit with the reds, and I'm going to go over it again. I'm just going to block it in again, and then I'm going to start working on refining that face. Okay, so that's that green blocked in again. You can still see bits of the underpainting or the under layers now through it, and that's fine because I want it to have some you know, texture, actually the appearance of texture under there. So I'm just going to refine this face a little bit more around the mouth, the teeth, and bring it up to a bit of a better level of completion. So that's the shadowy side of the canines, the lower canines. I can change the shape now on this muzzle area, the part that's in shadow. Keeping a nice sharp edge on my brush as well for the details. Now unfortunately I couldn't get the mixing palette over as well, so you could see that. But all I've done is added some Naples yellow in there to lighten that up a little bit. Just as suggestions of teeth there. Don't forget, when you're watching this, this is massively enlarged unless you're watching it on a phone or something. So you know, you really don't want to be putting in too much detail on paintings this size. So that shape all looks a little bit odd at the moment, but it's just where the green have actually come over it a bit, which I've done deliberately because I don't want that cut out edge if I was trying to butt up to it. So I allowed the green to come over a bit, knowing full well that I would overpaint like this. I'm just getting most of the darks in now. And this white area, it's got a lot of dark in there too. A lot of shadowy areas. And then I can overlay with the lighter fur texture then. And if you're doing a painting or you're painting along with this and your white areas are not showing up, you've just not gone dark enough underneath. A little bit lighter on the chin, so I just added a bit of white to the mix then just to lighten it. I'll save the the real highlights for the end as always. It's the same technique whether you're using oils, acrylics, or as I've found out recently, pastels. You overlay the whites or the lights on top of the darks almost always. Just making sure now I've got enough darks around this muzzle area so I can come back in with the lights later on as well. So you can see now I was quite critical when you're painting small like this, so to get those marks actually in the fur direction, because all of these marks are giving an impression on which direction the fur is growing. And I'm not too worried if I'm getting a bit too much on. I want the dark areas larger rather than smaller so that I can overlap. So I'm just making up a pinky colour for the nose. So that's just a bit of that cad red, some blue, a little bit of black in there as well, subduing it down a bit, and a little bit of white as well. Just a basic colour going in. With the basic colour in, then I can refine it much easier. It's easier than looking at something that's completely the wrong colour. So in a simple then to add just a little bit of dark to the mix and to create some of the shadows and highlights on there as well. Okay, so I've zoomed back out now so you can see the palette as well, and I've just created a little pile of light paint, pretty much white, pure white, just a little bit of Naples yellow in it, and I'm just, you know, refining the shape now on the highlighted sections, because these parts are really bright white. I can easily tone them down later by going over if I want to. Simple, do glazes with acrylics as well. I can even use a bit of medium or just water to glaze it. But I want to get these lights in so I can see just how light I need to go. I can see the brightest white that I've got then, and then I can judge everything else more easily by it. And it's going to help these sections pop out a bit more. There. Just a few marks makes it look much more realistic. Now you see the trouble with acrylic paints, where I would have then automatically dipped into the paint that I saw on my palette. If I was using oils and it would have still been wet, with acrylics it was dry. So that's why I've got like dots of mixes on my palette, because they're drying off so fast. And I'm so used to using alkyd oils, which, as you know, dries by the next day, or, you know, is tacking up after a couple of hours. So those mixes are open to me. So I'm using less paint with oils as well, because I'm not throwing away or wiping the palette off continuously. I usually have the palette the same for the whole day's worth of painting, or half a day's worth of painting. I don't have to keep wiping it off and putting fresh paint out all the time either. But I know lots of you can't use oils for whatever reason. Perhaps you're sensitive to them or the solvents, but I use odorless thinners. Bob Ross type I use. That's the best one I've found actually over the years. And I'm very sensitive to the smells and the odors as well, and I don't get any trouble with those. So perhaps it's worth, you know, if you are having trouble with acrylics and you're really struggling with it and you want to try oils, just get one colour, one tube of paint, the smallest amount of odorless thinners you can get, smallest little jug, and just try it. Just paint a little square or paint a big square on something and see how you get on. And then if you can't use it and you're sticking with acrylics, look into more of trying out the slow drying mediums that's out there, and really look into them, because it's such a benefit to have things dry that bit slower. And I'd say definitely have a look at the Stay Wet palette, because you'll be able to keep it flat in front of the painting. You won't have to have it vertically like this for recording, and I think that will simplify acrylic painting much more, with the mixing part of it anyway, and keep those paints open on the palette and wet for so much longer. It's something I'm definitely going to try myself, because painting with acrylics is great. It's, you know, it's just like painting with oils. The only difference is that drying time. So if you, perhaps you love that, and that's great, but if you're having problems with that, try out a couple of those suggestions and see if they'll make a big difference. Okay, so I'm just going to continue blocking in some of these lights now. This whole last section now I'm just going to speed up, because all I'm going to do is put a second layer on the tiger's body. So I'm just going to block it in. I'm going to block in some of the stripes because this is all now dry, and so it's just going to be a second layer, just done like the first, only refining those colors a little bit more. I'll block in some of the stripes, as I said, but you need to block in all of them if you are following along for practice purposes. And so there's nothing complicated here, it's just a bit of refinement, getting the colors a little bit more accurate, but it's just that blocking in. So by speeding this up, it means I can do a lot slower sections on the real detailed work on the next video. So just refining a few more areas now, changing the shape there up on the top of the neck, just enlarging it a little bit. A few of these stripes should go around as well. And this is pretty much bringing, you know, the underpaint into a finish on this first video, so it's just a blocking in. Now I would have done this quicker with my oils just because of familiarity with them. I'm actually going over this one, you know, another time more than I normally would, probably, to try and get the colours to the same stage where I want them nice and opaque. So just doing a very similar mix that I did last time with this body. And a little bit on the face as well, but you can see it is looking, as I said, much more opaque and more solid now. And the colours are easier to adjust and to get right when you've got something that's, you know, quite close as an underpainting. So as I'm squinting, I'm looking at the reference, I'm getting these much closer to where I want them. Brush marks definitely going in that fur direction now, so even if there's some texture left from the brush, it's going in the right position, so it's going to look like fur anyway. And this area on the chest needs to be a little bit whiter, or a little bit lighter, so I've added some white to the mix while that mix is still wet. And coming down onto the belly and the chest are similar colour, so I can do those at the same time. So once you've got a mix, you know, look around the canvas and see if there's somewhere else that's got that exact same colour, and that can be blocked in as well. So you don't have to keep mixing up different colours all the time. And that part of the leg there is catching a lot of bounced light, so there's a lot of green there on that light fur. And on this section of the paw is slightly purple. And I'm painting from the screen, don't forget, so it looks different on the screen. It's much more vibrant. Where my screen is to the left of me, it's a TV screen. So the colours are not necessarily the same as they are on a printed out reference photo. Okay, I've decided I needed to go a lot darker on this belly. So I made sure that that underpainting had dried, which only took a few minutes really with the acrylics. So I'm just blocking that dark in, and as it comes up then it goes up a little bit lighter. And by putting this more distant leg in a bit darker, it makes it recede more. Gives more of that three-dimensional look. And now I need to get these stripes in again. I can still see them through there, but only just. And what I could have done here to simplify it even more was looked at another of my tiger reference photos and actually painted all the stripes in from that. So a photo where I didn't actually have it behind any bamboo or stems, it wasn't blocked out at all. It would have been easier to have just blocked them all in and got every stripe in, and then I wouldn't have had to have been concerned with them being in right places at all. So that's a lesson I've learnt myself as well. to basically paint the animal as if there's nothing in front of it, and then when you put something in front it's much easier. Now the paints are dried on my palette, so I give it a good wipe off and a clean off. Put a couple of new colours out, just refreshing the paints. Now I can start on that grass again. I'm trying out different techniques basically with these acrylics to see what will look more real with the grasses and what doesn't, because with acrylics and oils, the beauty is you can try things out, and if you don't like them, let it dry and just go over it again. You can keep doing that over and over. You can keep blocking in a main colour and going over it again, so you haven't got no worries and stresses.